All right, welcome back, Brad. Here we are for another video. It seems like we are doing one after another on these things, but we're going to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars and how awful they are, almost like the AFC South. I can't believe how 4-13. The last team we talked about didn't have a much better record, or no, they actually had a worse record, didn't they?
Mhm.
If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. We weren't overly kind to the Tennessee Titans, but we're not here to make friends or enemies unless it's to our subscribers. So if you're not subscribed, by all means subscribe, and hopefully you enjoy what we're doing. But we're gonna get into the 4-13 Jaguars, and Brad, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I think if you are a fan of bad mouthing the AFC South as a division, you found the channel for you. So, like Brian said, go ahead and subscribe because I feel like we're going to be doing a good bit of that this week. But unlike the Tennessee Titans, where we didn't have a lot of nice things to say, I do actually have a good bit more optimism when it comes to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yes, they were a bad team last year. They were 25th in total offense per game. They were 31st in defense. Only one team was worse than that, but they were 25th against the run and 32nd against the pass. This was not a good team defensively at all, and it put their offense in bad positions, and they weren't much better. So this is a team that really needed to change a lot. And I know one thing that you really wanted us to stress in this video was how much the addition of a new head coach could mean for this team. If you have been following the series along, we talked about it in the Chicago video, what Ben Johnson can do for Chicago and what an impact we think he could have year one. I view Liam Cohen coming over to Jacksonville, bringing over that scheme that he ran so successfully with Baker Mayfield and co in Tampa. I think that can do a lot for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Hopefully, provide an actual good offensive scheme for Trevor Lawrence, who has had a revolving door of just bad offensive coaches since he really joined the league with Urban Meyer. I mean, that kind of started his decline off. Everybody thought Trevor Lawrence was the second coming of Peyton Manning, and for all we know, he still could be. But this is going to be kind of that put up or shut up year. I feel like we say that every year about Trevor Lawrence, but with Liam Cohen and what he has been able to do with a journeyman quarterback prior to this stint in Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield, this is kind of a year where everything needs to come together, and I think there's a good chance for it actually doing just that. But this is not a team that just changed out head coaches and said, we're running it back. There's a lot of former players that will not be there this year. Tight end Evan Ingram is a big part of that offense. He is now a Denver Bronco. They also got rid of Christian Kirk. They traded him to the Houston Texans. And Gabe Davis also walked in free agency. He has not signed anywhere else. Mitch Morse was their center. He is now retired. And Brandon Scherf, I believe, is also still a free agent. He has played a lot of snaps at guard throughout his career. Used to be a very high level guard. I think his play has fallen off over the last couple of years, but maybe that's an indictment on him and a very clear indication on why he's not signed a new contract yet, despite training camp now starting as of this video. Uh, and then Ronald Darby is a very talented cornerback. He also retired. He has hung up the cleats. Again, this is more names than we usually list in the departures portion of this video, but I think it just goes to show that there is going to be a new look offense and to a lesser degree defense as well when it comes to what Jacksonville's bringing to the table. So before we get into who they brought in free agency, just as far as these departures goes, what name would you pick out as being the biggest among them as far as what it does going from 2024 to 2025?
Um, Probably the Ingram over to Denver is the biggest one that he's probably going to be the biggest one missed. Um, you know, Obviously, with the play, I think I've said it in the past 3 or 4 or 5 videos. Offensive line is key to having a successful offense, both in the run game and the pass game. And so you've had a few departures on the offensive line. I don't know if that's a bad thing, honestly, as long as you replace them with decent players. So obviously, if you go out and go get a Brian, you're probably not going to do very good because I'm old and slightly overweight and probably would not do well in that position. But with that being said, as long as they replaced them and made the necessary upgrades. I like Trevor Lawrence as a quarterback. I liked him when he was at Clemson. I liked him when he was at Cartersville High School. I got to meet him. He graduated the same time my son did, and my son was also a quarterback, so went to a lot of the same quarterback camps that Trevor was in. Got to meet his parents. Super super nice people. Um, and Trevor is no different. So I want to see him do good. I said it in the last video. I really want to be able to pull for Jacksonville, but I also can't pull for bad football. I'm not necessarily a bandwagon fan and jump from team to team. Obviously, I'm an Atlanta fan and been an Atlanta fan since I was a little kid. So I don't necessarily jump like that, but at the same time, I like good football. I want to watch good football. So, and I hope that for Atlanta this year. And I really do. I hope it for Jacksonville. I really, really want them to do well. I want to be high on them, but also with it's not proven. Again, like you said, the coaching revolving door that's been down there at Jacksonville. It's really hard to get behind this team, and I know uh, Liam coming over from Tampa Bay, very successful, very good. You know, how does that transition into being a head coach and you're in charge of everything, not just the offense? How does he make that transition? Does he make this whole team better? Because as you can see by the numbers, it's not just the offense that was bad last year, it was the defense too. So, I've got to see some improvement from Jacksonville.
So looking at their signings for this offseason, a couple of big time contracts given out on the defense. Safety Eric Murray was given 3 years, 22.5 million, and Jordan Lewis at corner 3 years, $30 million. Spending a little money on that secondary. We talked about them being 32nd against the pass last year. They needed to invest in the secondary, and they might have even made a bigger investment in that secondary when we get to the draft. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. Another couple of signings they brought in on the offensive line, replacing Mitch Morse and Brandon Sheriff. You've got Robert Hainsey coming over from Tampa Bay, following Liam Cohen over to be the new starting center for this team. And then we talked about it in the Baltimore video. Patrick McCarry is currently slated to be the starting right guard for this team. I think that's a very good addition for them. This is somebody that's going to help the run game as well as the passing protection for this team. And then Diami Brown maybe got a little bit more than what some people would have suggested. 1 year, $10 million contract for Diami Brown. This is somebody that was a very promising young receiver when he got drafted by the Commanders. Has not always panned out to be as good as what people thought he was going to be. But obviously, Cohen made this signing a priority. They give him $10 million for 1 year to come in. This is somebody that if he does well, if he performs, has a really good connection with Trevor Lawrence, this is somebody that could get a multi-year extension as a result of how he plays this year. This is a textbook prove it kind of deal. And I think we could see some big numbers come from Diami Brown as the wide receiver 3 in this offense. Only one real notable re-signing that I think is kind of funny to bring up, and it's their punter, Logan Cook. 4 years, $16 million. I'm not sure what the going rate for starting punters is in this league. I know if you've got a good one, it might behoove you to pay them and keep them in. I also think that most punters are a dime a dozen, and maybe that's just the hater in me as far as the kicking positions in the sport. But I feel like you could probably draft a punter in the 7th round, and he could give you the same 40, 45 yards per punt that Logan Cook could have given you for $4 million less per year. So, that being said, just looking at the signings and going into the draft, you feel like they did a pretty good job as far as shoring up some of their positions of need.
I do. I like the signings on defense. We talked about it. They needed help, um, and they got it with a safety and a corner. So I I think they were much needed. I the wide receiver. I'm like you. He needs to prove it. It's a put up or shut up kind of thing. I want him to put up. Honestly, I want him to do good. And maybe he wasn't with the right quarterbacks in years past to be able to prove it. So Trevor is a good quarterback. He's got a cannon. He's going to throw the ball. So it's kind of up to you to catch it and make yards. So hopefully hopefully he can do that. And, you know, again, I think I want to be high on the Jacksonville Jaguars, but it's a lot of unprovens.
Yeah. Well, you talked about being a fan of good football. You want exciting football. You want a team that's willing to make a splash. And the Jacksonville Jaguars did just that. They were currently picking fifth. We talked about the Titans picking first. This was a couple of really bad teams in the division to have two division foes, both top five picks in the draft, just wasn't good enough. So they decided, you know what, we're going to pick 1 and 2. So the Cleveland Browns, if you watch our Cleveland video, we talked about them moving back from 2 to 5. Obviously, the team that came up to number 2 was the Jacksonville Jaguars, selecting Travis Hunter, a unicorn freak athlete, in my opinion, by far and away the best player in this draft, able to play both sides of the ball and play it very well. His numbers don't lie. Obviously, he won the Heisman last year for a reason, and it was because he was able to contribute on both sides of the ball the way that we haven't really seen before. So this is somebody that the coaching staff is obviously very high on to move up from 5 to 2 and what that costs to do. But that's somebody that they said, we feel like we drafted 2 players at once. This is somebody that can step in. He's been learning the offense. They feel like he is more naturally gifted on defense. He has to put a little bit more work into learning an offense than a defense. So over the course of this offseason, they have really focused on him as a wide receiver. But I believe they said that today was the first day of training camp that they were going to let him practice on both sides of the ball. So they are really going to harp on his offensive skills to begin with. But over the course of the season, this is going to be his norm. He's going to practice both sides of the ball and he's going to play both sides of the ball on Sundays. It's something that we haven't really seen in the NFL before. And I think he's not only going to do it, he's going to do it well. So before we get into a couple of their other picks, Travis Hunter is obviously the main focal point of this video. You look at their offseason, he is the crown jewel. He is the big piece that they got as far as what they needed to make their offense and their defense better. There's not one pick they could have made that would have done that like Travis Hunter. So did you like the move going up from 5 to 2 to secure Travis Hunter and the unique talent that he is?
I do, and I like his landing spot. I think he's going to do well in Jacksonville. I think he's going to be the face of that team. And as Trevor Lawrence, and as big a pick as he was a few years ago, you know, Hunter's going to be that same. Everybody's going to go out and buy that jersey because, like you said, he is that unicorn. He is that special player. Now, I don't necessarily know how well he's going to play on both sides of the ball in the NFL. You know, he did it very well at college in Colorado, and Deion Sanders let him do it. Hey, you got talent, go show it. But does that necessarily translate to the NFL? I don't know, nor does anybody. So I hope it is. I almost think they play him. You'll see him every Sunday at corner, wide receiver. I almost think they put in kind of special packages with him out there. But then when they do that, do people pick up on that and say, okay, they're wanting to get him the ball? But could he be used as a decoy? Absolutely. I- it's going to be interesting to see how Jacksonville integrates him to his wide receiver role, and at what level they do. I don't see him playing every play, every game like he did in college. I don't. They're not going to want to burn him out like that. And eh, as a fan of the young star, I don't want to see them burn him out like that. I don't want him to play every snap. And in 2 years, we're talking about how crippled he is. So, and how we think he needs to retire. So,
Yeah, I think they've obviously got a plan for his usage. We talked about Liam Cohen being the offensive coordinator for Tampa Bay. He comes over, and the first pick of the Liam Cohen regime is Travis Hunter. They view him as being a wide receiver. He is not a cornerback who can run routes. He is a true two-way player. I think they have a set plan for him on what he's going to be able to do on offense and on defense. But moving forward, they do not have a second round pick as part of the trade up to get Travis Hunter. But then they come back, pick 88 overall in the third round. They take another defensive back, Caleb Ransall out of Tulane. We talked about how bad they were against the pass, the signings that they made. This is somebody that can take snaps on the field, either out of nickel or maybe a boundary corner when Travis Hunter isn't out there. Again, you bring in receivers that aren't Travis Hunter. You bring in corners that aren't Travis Hunter, and now you're not expecting him to take 100% of the snaps on both sides of the ball. I love what they did shoring up those two positions and freeing up Hunter to be able to play both instead of having to play one versus the other. And then round 4, pick 104, Facial Tootin. This was the fastest running back at the combine, if I'm not mistaken. This was somebody that had a blazing fast 40. Everybody wanted to know where he was going to be. Well, he ends up coming out of Virginia Tech, now a Jacksonville Jaguar. I think he is going to be the third running back in their little committee of 3 that they've got. You look at what Liam Cohen did last year with Tampa Bay. They have Rashad White. Bucky Irving was a late round pick coming out of Oregon. You see what kind of year that he had. And then even Sean Tucker was getting some run, especially later on in the season. You've got Travis Etienne. You've got Tank Bigsby. Now insert Facial Tootin. You've got 3 talented running backs that can all do not only similar things, but also different things. They can have specialized roles. And this is going to be a hot hand approach. That's the way Liam Cohen likes it. If you are playing the best football of the 3, you're going to get the most amount of work. It's going to make them very unique, very hard to stop. So you talk about what they've added on offense. Yes, they lost a couple of veterans in Kirk and Ingram, but bringing in Hunter, bringing in Tootin, the pieces that they already had in place. I mean, before we really get into record predictions, just speaking on the offense alone, how good do you think Liam Cohen's offense could be this year?
I think it's going to be much improved over last year for sure. Um, I don't know. You got a lot again. You got a lot of unproven. Y'all got to go out and prove yourself. Um, I think they have some. Trevor Lawrence. We know it's a good quarterback. He's kind of proven, uh, but he also hasn't had the best coaching around him. So Travis Etienne obviously came in with Lawrence. Both of them come from Clemson, so they have a lot of Those two have a lot of chemistry together. I think adding some of these other pieces that helps them. But again, it boils down to how well your line's going to play. Especially with ETN, you got to look at injuries. How do you escape that injury bug this year, or at least for a little while, to be good? So again, I want to be high on Jacksonville. I think they're going to have a better season, uh, but we'll see. We'll have to work it through the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the biggest strength for Jacksonville is going to become their offense. I feel like this is the year that they become going from the 25th offense. I see them basically climbing into that top 15, being a top 15 offensive unit this year because Trevor Lawrence is a veteran at this point. You have that trio of running backs that we talked about with ETN, Tank, and Tootin. Brian Thomas Jr. was electric at receiver last year as a rookie. He's going to be, I think, just as effective this year, but maybe not as productive because he did not have anybody across from him like Travis Hunter last year. But you look at what Liam Cohen did last year with Baker Mayfield, okay? You've got Trevor Lawrence. I talked about the running backs and how they compared. Now, I'm not saying Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be as good as Mike Evans. There are very few receivers who are. But on the flip side of that, I think that if Brian Thomas Jr. is a poor man's Mike Evans in this offense, Travis Hunter is the Jeff Bezos's Chris Godwin of this offense. He's got such a high ceiling for how good he can be at receiver. Because if you watch some of his practice reps, his footwork and everything like that, it's actually abysmal. The fact that he's able to get the separation and run the routes that he is as poorly as they seem to be coached, it's basically like he was able to be coached at defensive back, but he was just such a good athlete. They said, go get open and we'll throw you the ball. And it worked out. I don't think that's going to work out the same way at NFL, but guess what? You've got NFL level coaching now that's going to make him a better route runner. He's going to have few wasted movements, a lot fewer wasted steps, and it's going to make him even better than I think he was at Colorado as a wide receiver. And so with so much defensive focus on a Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter being able to be freed on that other side and get some unique looks on offense, I think this can be a very dynamic unit led by Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence, and I'm excited to see what they do. But moving on, my biggest concern for the Jacksonville Jaguars, they've got a first-year defensive coordinator. Liam Cohen did not go out and grab a Gus Bradley or somebody that's been around the league for a long time defensive coordinator, a long time defensive play caller. He's got a new young staff. A lot of people are in positions they've never held before, and there's going to be some growing pains with that. And this defense just, I don't think, has enough to really be on par with the offense this year. I think they can get better. Obviously, we'll see how everything goes, but he's got a lot to improve upon from this 2024 unit. We talked about some of their signings, we talked about the draft picks, so on and so forth. But I'm looking for this offense to carry the Jaguars to whatever success they're going to have in 2025. And speaking of that, I've got them improving from a 4-13 team all the way to 10-7. Certainly not a top of the league, outcome, but somebody's got to win this division, and I think it's going to be the Jaguars. I think they're going to finish first in the AFC South, be a playoff team, and I think it's on the backs of some of these offensive moves. We talked about the veteran offensive line additions. They're not relying on rookies to protect Trevor Lawrence and run this scheme. I think it's going to be relying on some veteran faces and allowing their young guys to be dynamic. But that being said, what do you think as far as Jaguars in 2025? How good can they be?
Uh, they could be crazy impressive or they could be middle of the road. I don't know. I do think they are going to be better than what they were last year for sure. I don't know that I have them double digit wins. I think they're going to be around the 8 or 9 wins. Um, I think the Texans may give them a little bit of a fight for the number one spot in this division. Super hard to say, but I, I that's where I'm at with it. I think they're either a 8 win or a 9 win team. I don't know that I got them in double digits at this point.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to the Texans yet. I believe they're going to be the fourth team in this division we talk about. So if you want to know what we think about the Houston Texans and what their chances are of outlasting the Jaguars on the crown for the AFC South this year, you're going to have to come back on Friday and watch that video. But like I said, I've got the Jaguars. Sounds like you might have the Texans for that one. We'll have to see who's right on it. But moving forward to fantasy football, there's some intriguing names on this offense as far as what they can be and contributors for this year. So, is there anybody that you're specifically seeking out from Jacksonville in your drafts?
If anybody, I'm scared of the Travis Hunter thing. As high as we were on this video, and I do think he's a unicorn player. I don't know that I would pick him up this year. Trevor Lawrence, he's a good quarterback. He's a proven quarterback. You said earlier he's a veteran quarterback at this point. I wouldn't mind taking him, you know, later rounds, maybe being my QB2 if I'm playing in a league with no defenses, or definitely a backup QB. Um, or I mean, he actually could be your QB1 if you want to spend most of your top picks, like most of us do on running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, things of that nature. He's not a bad pick to pick up later rounds. Um, he's not gonna wow you like a Daniels, or Lamar Jackson or any of those, or even an Allen. I don't put him up there in those leagues, but I'm not mad if that's who my quarterback is either. I think, especially this year, I think he's going to score points. I think he's going to have much better coaching around him that's going to allow him to score points and really go back to seeing the Trevor Lawrence that we saw at Clemson and at Cartersville High School versus, what we've seen in the past couple of years.
Yeah, and I think if you look at this offense in 2025, yes, it's going to be a different place. It's a different team with different names and faces. But look at the 2024 Buccaneers offense and draw your comparisons there. What did you want from that? You wanted Baker Mayfield because he was a 4,000
Yep.
yard passer. He had a career high with 41 touchdowns. I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence is throwing 41 touchdowns, but it's definitely within the realm of possibility because he's got the arm for it. He's got the same mobility that Baker Mayfield does. He's got the same toughness that Baker Mayfield does. He can
Yep.
extend plays. He can keep his eyes downfield. He's got a pair of very talented receivers, like what Baker Mayfield had last year with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans before their injuries. You look at what Brian Thomas Jr. having the year that I think a lot of people expected Marvin Harrison Jr. to have last year. He had that rookie year with Trevor Lawrence and with Mac Jones. And I think what Liam Cohen brings scheme-wise is going to be very good for both Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter. I'm not afraid of adding Travis Hunter. Obviously, if you're in an IDP league where you can put him in as a defensive back and let him also catch passes and catch touchdowns, that's going to be a cheat code. Make him the first overall pick in those type leagues.
100%.
But even in a standard redraft league, I mean, I wouldn't mind having Travis Hunter as a bench receiver, and you wait over the course of the season. And if he's getting more run on defense and less on offense, maybe they've had some injuries on the defensive side of the ball and it's forced them to play him more as a strict corner. Okay, you just drop him. That's no big deal. But if you see that he is a uniquely effective wide receiver, he gets a bunch of scheme looks, he's catching screen passes, he's getting big plays, deep crossers, touchdowns, that sort of thing, why not put him in as a flex player? He's somebody that I'm willing to take a risk on because I don't think you're going to have to draft him as highly as you put his teammate. And then Trevor Lawrence, I mean, we talked about it. He could have the most productive year of his career. And I think you can take advantage of the poor start to his career by maybe him not being drafted where he should be coming into this year because of how bad Jacksonville has been over the stretch of the last few years, and then let him outproduce his draft position over the course of the season, because we could be looking at him being drafted as a top 10 quarterback next year because of what he does this year, and you're going to want that on your team. If you can't get a Jaden Daniels or a Lamar Jackson, why not wait and get Trevor Lawrence and let him kill people with volume? Because, yeah, you've got 3 good running backs, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be running the ball a lot. This team is going to live and die by the arm of Trevor Lawrence and how he distributes the ball, because all 3 of those running backs have pass-catching chops too, like what Bucky Irving and Rachaad White did last year. This is somebody that is going to distribute. He can throw it 50 times a game, and that's probably going to be close to what Jacksonville wants to do. So I'm not really ashamed of taking Brenton Strange. Take your pick as far as the running backs go. You call your shot on who you think is going to be the most productive one. I think all 3 of these running backs have an argument for being the RB1. And whereas I do think we're going to see all 3, it's kind of a mixed bag. You stick your hand in the bucket, whichever one you pull out might be right. So I'm not mad taking a piece of any of this offense because I think it's going to be so much better with Liam Cohen as the head coach.
I agree, 100%. All right, guys, that brings us to the end of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I hope you enjoyed it. Brad, I thank you for joining me for this one. Would like to give a shout out to our lads. We do look at their depth charts, get kind of our game plan for these videos and pull other information. So we want to give them a big shout out. But again, we are going to get out of here, and we will see y'all in the next video.